In this video, I'm going to talk about accessing and understanding Motus data. So really what happens after uploading data to Motus? I guess it first needs to get to Motus somehow. So you send it to Motus, and then it gets processed through one of the pipelines. It depends on the source of the data and what is in the data. It gets filtered for public output, and then we store it in the database. So the database is basically where everything is accessed from when you see it on the website or through the R package. So when you access data, you're accessing through an interface called API, and what it accesses depends on whether you're getting filtered data or unfiltered data, but it's all coming out of the database. So as you can imagine, if there's any breakage along this chain, it can result in missing or inaccessible data. So there's a lot of places where things can go wrong, where we're trying to maintain all the time. To get into a little more detail about how data is processed, it really depends on three main factors. That's the type of receiver that's the data comes from. That's how it's uploaded to Motus, either automated or manual, or what type of tag tech is in the data. So there's low-tech tags and there's CTT tags. Those get processed in different places. So first, I'd sort of created these three diagrams. Each diagram is for a different type of receiver. So if it's the sensor dome, well, it's any kind of station. If it's manually uploaded, it's going to be, when you manually upload it, you're downloading the data to your computer from the receiver, and then later on, on the internet, you're going to the Motus website and uploading that data using our management tool, the upload tool there. So all that data is going to go to the Motus server first, and that's where it gets split off into the different processing sections based on whether there's CTT data or low-tech data. And the CTT data all will go to the CTT processing server, and the purpose of that is to remove any non-CTT tags, non-Motus tags. There's some false positives in there, and there's some tags that aren't associated with Motus, so we remove that before storing it in the Motus database. For the low-tech data, it gets processed on Motus servers as well, just in a different place, and it's processed using this algorithm called Tag Finder. That's kind of complicated, but essentially it's using this algorithm to identify Motus tag IDs from all the tag signals mixed together, which I'll show a little bit on the next slide, but I'll try not to get into too much detail there. Now, if you're automatically uploading data, this can only happen on a sensor node or a CTT sensor station. On a sensor node, that automatic upload data all goes to a server called the sensor node server, and from there it gets sent to Motus and CTT, depending on the type of data that's being sent to it. The CTT server, on the other hand, the CTT sensor station, on the other hand, all uploads data to the CTT server, and from there it sends the data to us, so low-tech data and CTT tag data. So there's the breakdown in the chain can occur sometimes on the CTT server or the sensor node servers. It's not necessarily just Motus servers. And remember, sensor node is an open source project, so sensor node server is hosted by basically a volunteer right now who's working on the data set, but we host the sort of independently. It's not a for-profit kind of situation. Now, in terms of the tag data and how it's processed, as I mentioned, CTT tags are only filtered to remove data from tags that aren't part of Motus. The data itself, it contains the tag IDs in it and everything, so nothing really has to change there. It's just removing stuff that isn't relevant. Low-tech tags data, on the other hand, it doesn't give us tag IDs in the raw data. Instead, it's just a timestamp for basically a radio pulse, and in order to get a tag ID, you need 4 of these radio pulses in a row that match up to a known signature for a low-tech tag. And then you need to get another 4 pulses in a row to get the Motus tag ID. The reason is that the manufacturer only uses the first 4 pulses, the manufacturer only uses those 4 pulses to get an ID, and Motus uses the interval between the times that it sends out those signals to sort of increase the number of possible IDs that are out there. So in the example at the bottom of the page, you can see there's 4 pulses, and that corresponds to tag ID number 1, just as an example, and then it's emitting those 4 pulses every 4.7 seconds. So you can imagine you can get another tag out there that's distinct from this one that might have the same manufacturer ID, but the interval will be 4.9 seconds. And that in that way, or 4.3 seconds, just to keep it prime. In that way, there won't be any chance of those signals being mistaken from one another, and you can tell those tags apart. Now, once the data is processed and in the database, there's a bunch of ways you can explore data. Online, you can use our online data management tools, and you have to be logged in a Motus user in order to access them. And then you also use there's summary tables and timelines available online as well, which are accessible to anybody. And then the data dashboard, which is in a beta stage right now, but it's sort of the public web interface that's supposed to be nice and pretty to look at, which accesses the same data as the summary tables. The R package, on the other hand, is the only way that you can access those individual hits, so like the most granular data that we have to offer. Everything above it is summary data. And so you can't really do analysis with summary data so much. The R package is really what you need if you want to do an analysis. And in order to get access to any data, you have to be a collaborator on the project who put up the tags, or on the project who has the stations that you're collecting the data from. Just going a little more detail on the online data management tools, you have 2 options for viewing data. There's the unfiltered summary data. There's a receiver timeline and a deployment timeline. So these are both unfiltered summaries. That means the data here, there may be some false data in there, but we present it anyways, just so that you see everything. And it's really helpful for diagnostics or for early viewing of the data, just to quickly see if there's something going on. And these are only available to people who are collaborators who have the receivers that collect the data. So this is an important thing to know. If you have a receiver, you have access to these data for your receiver. The other option is to use the summary tables that we have online. So these are available to all Motus users. If you're not logged in, you won't be able to see the timelines or the maps that are available. But if you are logged in, then you can. And these are basically just big tables of everything that's been detected, or all the stations that are in your project, or a timeline of when detections occurred at your station, or when your tag was at different stations. It's a bunch of different visualizations, and not the most friendly for the public, but if you're a Motus user, you can kind of get the hang of things, and it's a helpful way to look at things. Now, the data dashboard is really supposed to help with that learning curve part of things, or looking at the data. It can be a little overwhelming still because there's a lot going on in the internet, so we're working on improving that. But for now, this is sort of where we point people towards when we want to give people a view of the data publicly, and it's supposed to have everything there in one place. So you don't have to be logged in to see this data, and it's only showing you summary data that's been filtered to remove false positives. Obviously, like you can see on the image in the left, that there are clearly some false positives with that bird flying all the way to British Columbia and back from Ontario. However, where we try to stay on top of those things and remove those false positives as we see them come in. And there's other visualizations in there, like little charts and stuff and tables. So here's a little example video of detections of swings and stretches in the fall of 2022. And you can see it's a really cool way that you can animate these tracks and show people what's being collected. So there's a lot of different ways to explore the data using the dashboard, and then you can also record videos like this using it and present them to your partners. Now, finally, is the R package. So this is where you get all your unfiltered granular data. So every individual hit for your station or for your tags. And those data are only going to be available for projects that you have access to through your account on Motus. So if you're trying to get access to something and it says you're not allowed, that's the reason. You just don't have, you're not a collaborator on that project that has that data on it. Now, there's two types of databases that you download through the R package. There's a receiver database and a project database. The receiver database is for a single receiver serial number. You're going to download all the data for that serial number, and it's basically, it only works if you have that receiver registered to your project. Now, the project database, on the other hand, gives you all the detections of tags that are registered to the project number you put in when you're running the command. So that tends to be what most people use as the project database, but you can use receiver database, and it's no big deal. So those are the options you have. And there's some more resources to view later on if you ever want to. There's an R book, details on how to use the R package. It's all in there, a little tutorial and all that stuff. We have Motus docs, which tells you how a little more detail how data is processed and also how tags work. And then obviously the data dashboard, we recommend you take a look at that. Is this motus.org/dashboard.